Hello, and welcome to Sobercast. We provide AA speaker meetings and workshops in a podcast format. We are an ad-free podcast, and if you enjoy listening, please help us be self-supporting by visiting Sobercast.com, look for the donate link, and drop $1 or $2 into the virtual basket. Also, if you're a member of NA or have friends that are, please tell them about our other podcast, NAPOD. NAPOD features NA speakers and workshops in the same format as Sobercast. We upload a new speaker every day, and it's easy to subscribe by searching for NAPOD, N-A-P-O-D, all one word, on any podcast player app, or go to napod.xyz if you'd like to listen online. Hope you enjoy the podcast and have a great day.
We're on step 5 tonight, and with that, tonight's speaker is Ari from Oaks East in Cedar Knolls, and I'll bring up Ari. Thank you.
The short people modification. Good evening, everybody. My name is Ari, and I'm an alcoholic. And it's only through the grace of a loving God, strong sponsorship, the 12 steps and 12 traditions, and service in this program that I haven't found it necessary to take a drink since April 9th of the year 2000. And for that, I am really, really, really grateful, and so is everybody else. To briefly qualify, I asked my sponsor, who spoke here a few weeks ago for step 3, I said, should I qualify? Because I've never spoken at a workshop before, so I'm really, really nervous. This thing is really overwhelming. I said, do I qualify? She said, yeah. She said, and then she told a little story about what she said, and then I said, oh, God, I never did that. I must not be an alcoholic. So just to prove to you that I'm an alcoholic after 11 in a little bit, I still have, delusion about my own disease. I still have, the disease working in my mind. I believe that I was born an alcoholic. I had the ism before I had a drink, and when I had the drink, it didn't make my disease worse. It just kept me from not killing myself until, I found the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I loved the way that alcohol turned my brain off. And I love the way they gave me all the promises, all the 9-step promises, and a lot of all the other promises. Like I was thinking about how, first alcohol gave me the 3rd-step promises, like a new feeling of freedom and power, and rushed in. Oh yeah, it did. And then all the other promises. It never gave me the 10-step promises, though. Oddly, I did not stop fighting anything or anyone. I actually kind of fought a lot more. So yeah, I'm definitely an alcoholic, and I am not an alcoholic who can say that I came to AA and I stopped drinking and everything was better. I came to AA, I stopped drinking, and I found out just how sick I really was. And the longer I stayed stopped without doing the work in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, the sicker I became, the more unhappy I became. I didn't come here one time, unfortunately. I came here a number of times. And I'm speaking tonight on the 5th step. And it's funny, I never thought my first time around in AA that I actually did anything that had anything to do with the steps. I was 20 years old. And I was in a treatment facility where we, worked steps with our, groups and our counselors. And I really thought that doing a 4th step and a 5th step was where I get to tell you all about how much I had been wronged at that point by my mom. And, if you had my mom, you would drink too. And which seems to be a recurring theme in my life. I just went on vacation with my parents, who are now in their 70s, and I'm only sober long enough to go away with them for 5 days, not 7. So check back with me in like 5 more years. Maybe we can do a whole week. Apparently it's not happening as quickly as I thought it was, or I'm not working hard enough. I don't know. And my expectations of a 4th step and subsequently the 5th step that came after it were that I'm going to tell you all this stuff that was done to me, and then you're going to tell me it's not my fault. That was my expectation. This is not that I was doing them out of the book. I was doing one of those Hazelden guides. It was not a proper fifth step. It was not a proper fourth step leading to a proper fifth step. It was my really juvenile and immature expectations, and it was not, I didn't get, the promises that are promised after, a proper fifth step, because I didn't do the work. I didn't do the preceding work, and I didn't get the result, which was shocking, I know. I continued to stay dry in AA for almost 4 years after that, and oddly, I still was really ruled by being dependent on other people, and that was really, most of my, looking back at my drinking career and my not drinking career, but my prior to working the steps, my life prior to, when I say working the steps, I mean really working the steps, doing it out of the big book, doing it the way that, it was written. The things that characterized my life and caused me incredible pain and discomfort and unhappiness, and were the things that made me uncomfortable enough to need to take a drink, to want to take a drink, to have to take a drink, or to act out in some other way if that's wasn't what was available to me, was that, my entire life was based on needing you to love me, because I hated myself. And having no, just opening my mouth and God knows what was going to come out, and having no control over what that was going to be, and getting myself into situations because I opened my mouth and had no control over what was going to come out, that were sometimes, humorous and sometimes horrible. And, my grandmother, may she rest in peace, used to say that words are like birds, and once they fly out of your mouth, you can very rarely catch them. And, it's funny, all the great sages of the world, from, the Psalms to Buddha, have a lot of cautions about the things that we say and the way that we use our words, because they're so hurtful to people. And, fear and the need to control situations has led me to say things so hurtful, to the people that I love them, not to strangers. I'm not somebody who's going to yell out my car window to somebody in a street. I will do it with the windows closed. I'm not somebody who's going to start a fight over a parking space, but I mean, to somebody that I love, to a family member, to a friend, out of fear and out of, mostly fear. It's really just all fear. I've said things that are so hurtful without even knowing that I was saying it. And in the end, what happens? Our fellows step on our toes, and we're asking ourselves why, and why does this relationship go wrong? And it's because, I'm reacting. And we talk about the fifth step, responding versus reacting. And before we do a proper fifth step, we're still reacting. So in the part of my life where I was still reacting, I was reacting all over the place. And up until the time I was probably about 31 years old, every decision I made was a reaction. I got married. It was a reaction to the idea that I never thought that anyone would ever ask me, so I married a jerk. I did. I said yes because he asked. I was reacting to an old idea. I had a child because I thought I had to have this child, and everything I did was just a reaction. I backed into my life. That's what I used to say. And it's so funny because I'm a really bad backwards driver. I had to have my friend that came with me tonight park the car because I'm a good parallel parker, but I just am not a good backwards driver. And it's kind of a funny little, contextual thing that, in my life I wasn't a very good backwards driver because I was backing into every decision. It wasn't that I was, considering and contemplating, asking for guidance and making a clear decision the way that I do today. It was, I was presented with the outcome of my bad decisions, and I would have to back into wherever I was left to stand, and that's what I did. So everybody's business was my business. If your grandmother's cat died, I would, sit Shiva. Everybody's business was my business. I was so over emotional about things that had nothing to do with me. And it wasn't even fake. It was like real. I mean, I'm not someone who can cry on command, but my heart would break over things that really had nothing to do with me, because I was so invested in what was outside, and so shut off to what was inside. I didn't want to look inside. Inside was terrifying. It was a cesspool, and it was terrifying, and I wanted nothing to do with it. And from a very young age, and this is how I know I was born alcoholic, I really believed that everything was wrong. Everything that went wrong was my fault. And I was constantly trying to evade blame. And that's not because I was, beaten as a child. That's because I have a huge alcoholic ego, like the biggest one they make. I mean, I'm sure you all have matching alcoholic egos, because I'm not going to have the biggest ego in a room of egos. I think we're all equally alcoholic, but I don't know. I never talked, I never brought it out in the light either. I never talked about it. I remember my mom developed an ulcer as a pretty young kid because of, the stuff that she went through growing up. My parents are both Holocaust survivors, and my mom had to go to the hospital for some sort of a surgery that had to do with her ulcer. And I remember I had to be less than 7 years old, because we still lived in the house we lived in until I was 7 years old. And I remember sitting on the front steps. They were slate, and it was warm. It was like summertime. And I was sitting there, and I was thinking, it's my fault. My mother's ulcer, this is my fault. And feeling the weight, the full weight of that, and how it was my fault. And then, and I'm not sure what I did with it. I probably, used it for self-pity, that I probably got my grandmother to feel sorry for me and make me something good to eat. I'm not really sure what I did with it, but I knew for a fact it was not something that I was maybe it's my fault. I knew. I was sure. And then there were things that I was sure were your fault. And there was no gray area, it's 50% you, 50% me. So I was a blamer, There could never be things that just happened. It couldn't just be raining, and it couldn't just be that you accidentally bumped into me. It couldn't be that you accidentally broke my favorite toy, or that you didn't know that I really liked that boy and that you talked to him at the dance. It's you intentionally wanted to hurt me. And everybody was like that, whether you knew me personally or not. And so I began my long and illustrious career as a professional victim. And it was exhausting. And, so that was life before the fifth step. And my whole, before a proper fifth step. And so everything I did and everything I felt and everything I experienced was connected to, they talk about the tail wagging the dog. It was you all were the dog, the whole world was the dog, and my whole life was the tail. And you guys, everything you did, every person I saw, every person I met, every interaction I had, was the way that I experienced myself. So if I had a negative experience, an uncomfortable experience, any kind of experience that wasn't Ari, we love you, Ari, we think you're fantastic, beautiful, hot, sexy, great, smart, you belong at Harvard or Stanford or on the cover of Cosmo, it wasn't good enough, and I wasn't good enough, and let me have a drink. And that's how it was. That's what it felt like to be me before I did a proper fifth step. God forbid you should have a right to feel something of your own, because everything you felt, everything you did, everything that you considered, if you crossed the street, it was about me. It was tough, the entire world, and of course all of this, connects back to, selfishness and self-centeredness, and that is the root of all our problems. But, the way that this plays out in my life and in our lives, I think, as alcoholics, is the way that it connects to, our perception and our behavior. And the way it changed after my first fifth step was the way that I could look at something new and know that it wasn't about me, and have the experience to see that it was a reaction, that I was having not to your action, but to my fear. So, hang on, let me take a sip of my tea. And I think that the most amazing thing is that I really thought I was the only person who ever felt like that. Like, no one else felt like that. And I was really tremendously shocked to find out that someone else felt like that. And I thought that, maybe there was one other person who felt like that, maybe two. And, as I first began to experience Alcoholics Anonymous that first time around when I was 20, I was very young. 20 is young. If you're young and you're here, congratulations, don't screw it up. It's a gift. Or, God has a plan for you, and you can do it the easy way and you can do it the hard way, but, I did it the hard way. At 20, I wasn't hearing, I'm not saying it wasn't available, I was not hearing the message of the big book. I was hearing, it's a selfish program, and I made the most of that. I didn't get to experience doing the work through the big book at that point. I had to go out and drink again and get to the point where, my reactions, got to the point where I drove everyone out of my life. There was almost no one left in my life that wasn't related to me, or contracted by law or medical insurance that would talk to me. I had a couple of friends who said, we love you, but we won't talk to you until you have at least 2 years sober. And one friend who said, I will only talk to you if you're doing what your sponsor tells you to do. And he was a pain in my butt. It was pretty amazing. And I was lucky this last time around that, well, it wasn't the last time around, I guess. It was the second to last time around, technically, because I was still, reacting. Still reacting. When I finally got to a proper fifth step, well, I have to say that writing that fourth step, an honest fourth step, was, it was gut clenching for me. Like, I felt sick, physically ill for like months. And when I finally got to do the fifth step, I was expecting to feel differently. Like, I still was expecting the pat on the back and it's okay, it's not your fault. And I don't know why, because I had read the big book and I had been to big book workshops and I had gone to big book, like serious big book meetings. And I don't know why I kept thinking somebody was going to let me off the hook, because I still didn't get the point. And here's the point, what I think is the point of the fifth step. The point of the fifth step, well, one of the major points of the fifth step for me is empowerment. It's I was walking through life with a blindfold on, banging into people and walls and trees and rocks and getting banged up because I didn't know how not to. And seeing myself as I really was, the patterns of my behavior, my wrong perceptions, my, really inappropriate dependencies on people and on other people's opinions, my inappropriate, emotional outbursts, my, need to be all up in other people's business when I could barely manage my own, my blaming when it's just a possibility that maybe, God has a plan and I should just step back and let it unfold. That was my power. When I'm not blaming and I'm not depending and I'm just being in this very moment, in the two little places where my feet stand right now, you don't have any power over me and I don't have any power over you. We're just in the same room, breathing the same air and the lungs that God gave us, and I have as much power as you to do whatever I can in this moment with my life. This is my power, This is all the power that God is ever going to give me is in this moment. And if I'm living, reacting to whatever happened 10 minutes ago or fearing whatever isn't going to happen 10 minutes from now, then, I've lost the lesson of the fifth step. And so for me, this was the key, understanding that I spent my whole life wanting people to, behave a certain way for me or react a certain way for me and do what I need them to do to feed my ego and, quell my fear. And because of that, I missed this. I missed this moment. And the fifth step gave me the power to respond to this moment, just to be in this moment. And it is the greatest gift I ever got. I mean, the first, second, and third step are, great ideas. They give you, they give you the foundation to do the fourth step and then the fifth step, which gave me this great gift. And then, the things that I take from the fifth step, are this empowerment, this I don't have to look at the world this way I don't have to look at myself in relation to the world this way anymore, which is amazing. The application of what I learned in the fifth step, obviously, is, tempered through the use of the sixth and the seventh step, which you'll hear in the next 2 weeks. I mean, I can find out that I'm needy and, I have a big mouth and I'm nosy into other people's business and I blame, and I can do nothing with that stuff. Or I can stop and, like they always say in those goofy, therapy type situations, awareness is the first step. And the fifth step is where I initially became aware of the things that I really did that were shooting myself in the foot every single time. Today, that first fifth step was painful when I thought about all the relationships I destroyed, because I kept doing, it's so funny now, my fifth steps are, my resentment lists are mostly it's the same person, not the same person, it's like a shorter list of people, and it's all the same resentment. They're just not behaving the way that I think they should. Is that about right? Yeah, that's about right. And, my defect is, my sponsor's here, so I'm just checking to make sure I'm not lying. And you tell me if I'm not telling the truth, Rose. And my defect usually has to do with judgment and controlling, which, because it's based on fear that things aren't going to be the way I want. And, because I'm not, it says in our literature, going to be rendered white as snow, but I'm free and clear of the delusion that my way is going to work. So I keep going back and I keep looking at it and I keep looking for new ways to respond. And that is the gift, rather than trying to open up a some sort of a dialogue based on the same old ground, going over it and over it. I think one of the other gifts of the fifth step has been the ability to have the 10-second delay. Sometimes I have, except for with my mom, and sometimes my 15-year-old daughter. The 10-second delay, when you're about to say something that is really going to stink and you're going to have to make amends for it later. The 10-second delay is one of the greatest gifts of sobriety. First, I got the 10-second delay when I was thinking about a drink. Early on, it was, I want a drink. And then I would have the 10 seconds that I need, that God would grace me with, where I would then be able to take a deep breath and pick up the phone and call another alcoholic. Or take a deep breath and say, okay, there's a meeting in 20 minutes, let me go there. Or take a deep breath and ask God to remove the obsession. Now I have a 10-second delay before I open my mouth and say something or do something that is a reaction and not a response. And it's so funny because this concept of response versus reaction is something that is talked about in the great halls of business. If you go take a higher level management seminar and they're talking about how to deal with employees or, people that are your lateral, why can't I think of that word right now? People that are on the same level as you, people above you, people that are your direct reports or whatever. Sales people, people that you are trying to sell to, they talk about responding versus reacting. And the people that have great success in business and great success in life, they're people that respond. People that go off, that react, not so successful. And I wondered my whole life, why was I not getting anywhere in my career? Oddly, in the last 8 years, I've had a reasonable amount of success in my job. And I can't figure it out. Must be because that was around the time I started really getting some traction when I was doing work in my fifth step. The first two were really just digging out the sewage. And since then, it's been a little bit more serious. Not that I wasn't serious at first, but it took me the first two out of the book just to get all the gunk out. And then it was time to talk about the stuff that, that Bill talked about in that emotional sobriety letter, The Next Frontier. Somebody sent me this week, and I read it years ago, but I read it again this weekend, and I remember seeing people who had many years of sobriety when I was new in sobriety and thinking, is that really what 30 years of sobriety looks like? Cranky and miserable and grouchy and unhappy. I'm not drinking. And then, thank God, I met people, who had a different solution. It says in the big book about the fifth step, which I had marked and then took my pages out, and now I have to look it up, so give me a second. It talks about the people that we tell our fifth step to, and how we share our fifth step, and I tried to, latch on to who I was going to do my fifth step to, and that was really interesting in the beginning. But now I think I would do a fifth step with anybody. Like if I mean, obviously my preference is doing it with my sponsor, but if I, in the short term, if I had a resentment and it was burning and I took it across the columns and I needed to get it out and I couldn't get my sponsor, I'd call a sponsee sister or one of the other women in my line, and the only person I wouldn't, fit a resentment with is my husband, who's also in the program, because that's just not a good policy. And because the only, one of the things that I can definitely say is that delaying a fifth step, which I actually did delay my last fifth step for a really, really long time for reasons that I don't truly understand, but it just seemed to be, it's not that so much that I wanted to delay it at the end, it just seemed to be like what God's path was for me. Made me even more willing to look deeper. But generally delaying is not a good idea. So don't delay. If you can't, have it with the person you wanted to have it with, then pick someone else and get it done. Despite being able to look so clearly at all of my faults and defects and perspectives and, reactions and responses, I am not yet perfect. I know you're shocked. Me too. No one's more surprised than me. And hush over there. That's my cheering section, the ones who've known me the longest. And, just this week, I got into a really deep place of fear with something with my daughter, and I reacted really badly, and I had to do inventory, not like 10-step inventory, but write it all the way out across the columns, and I had to make amends to her because of it. And, it was humbling, and the importance of, and I am certainly not, judging anyone's program, and there is, it says earlier in our literature, and we agnostics, that the realm of the spirit is broad and roomy, and I certainly subscribe to that, but, I think that doing a real fifth step, writing out a fourth and doing a fifth step rather than living in 10, 11, and 12, which is wonderful, but not thorough enough for this alcoholic, because I could gloss over stuff too easily, I think, if I don't do written inventory, more regularly, which, yes, I'm on it. I'm on it, Rose. I don't know. I think that there's things that we lose track of, and things that I don't even know that I'm holding in. And the way that I get to see that is I watch my behavior. Am I sliding back into reaction? If I'm looking in my nightly inventory, and I'm seeing I'm reacting to people, or I'm living in fear, or I'm starting to, place blame, or I'm having mood swings, or any of those things on page 52, or starting to crop up in my life, then maybe, and I'm, doing all the things I normally do, then it might be time again for me to, grab my power back by, writing out the inventory and doing the fifth step. The principle of the fifth step is really bringing, it's having enough integrity to say, and being humble enough to say, it all looks good on the outside, but here's really where I'm at. This is really where I am. And where I am is that, I'm still crazy enough or sick enough or alcoholic enough to get really fearful about certain areas of my life. And as a result, I act badly. It almost killed me have to tell my sponsor what I said to my daughter. It was hard. What I said to her was terrible. It was terrible because I was afraid. I wanted to control the situation. I said something so awful that I had nightmares about it for like 3 days. And it wasn't that bad. I mean, it was bad, but it wasn't like I said you should go die and jump off a cliff. Like, it was just something that I wished that I hadn't said. And it was something that if someone had said it to me at 15 in that situation, it would have been really hurtful. And but I knew that it wasn't enough for me to admit it to myself. The fifth step is, admitting to God and to myself and to another human being the exact nature of my wrongs. And so I admitted it to God, and I admitted to myself. But I couldn't stop there. It wasn't enough. I had to admit to another human being. And now I admitted it to you. That's a lot of human beings, which doesn't get me any extra credit because I didn't tell you the exact nature of my wrongs. So it doesn't matter. Not a fifth step in here. I guess, the power of admitting the exact nature of my wrongs is that they have no power left over me. We spit it out, and it feels like it's, going to be this big, horrible, venomous thing that comes out of you, and it's just not that big. I mean, it seems really big in my head when I'm thinking I did the most horrible thing in the world, and, it's not the most horrible thing in the world. It just isn't the thing that you want to do. And it seems they're all intertwined, all these reaction behaviors, because when I act out of fear and I'm looking to control, I start getting on edge, and I start looking for ways to, get into that blame game again, where I just fall right back into that place where all of a sudden, I don't know what it is. It's that instant, what do you mean? I didn't say that. Don't blame me. And then I start getting into other people's business because I'm going to blame them. And it's like an instant rewind to shutting God out, because all of a sudden there's something that I'm holding in. So I think that the use of Step 5 in either of its forms, whether you're doing a full inventory or a quick fifth step where you're writing on the back of a cocktail napkin or a, piece of paper on your desk and you're calling your sponsor at lunchtime, whichever way you do it, it's useful. It's an amazing thing not to be connected to the mood swings of others, which is why I made it 5 days on vacation with my mother without acting badly. The last 2 days, I lost my way because I let myself get off balance. And I got off balance because I forgot that I was alcoholic for a minute. And you're saying, okay, you're supposed to be teaching me about the 5th step. But this is about the 5th step. See, what happened was I took this moment and I didn't do what it says. It says we pocket our pride and go to it, illuminating every twist of character, every dark cranny of the past. Pride is the number one thing that will keep me from living in a place where I can work a perfect step 5. Well, you don't have to work a perfect step 5, but you can come damn close. And I know there are people say that you don't have to work any step perfectly. Step 5 is one that you can do pretty well with, because it's just a matter of willingness and honesty and, being able to get on the phone or get with your sponsor and say what you need to say. I think that the truth is something that was flexible. Well, it's not even I think. I know that the truth was flexible to me. And it's changed the longer I'm sober. What was honesty to me a year ago was not honesty to me, is not honesty to me now, and it wasn't honesty to me 7 years ago. Because God reveals more and more, the longer I'm sober. The 5th step, I guess if you're talking about kitchen tools, is that onion peeler. The 5th step is the onion peeler, in our spiritual toolbox, and it's what helps shave off the skin and helps us get down to the core. And I'm nowhere near the core. I know that another layer came off this year, and it was stinky and raw, and as onions tend to be. And I don't, it's uncomfortable to do, and it's like learning all new behaviors. Every time you do it, it's looking at a situation and saying, I'm not going to react this way, and you're like, I'm not going to react this way when this person does this, or when this happens, or when I feel this. I'm just going to react, or not react at all. I'm going to respond with love and tolerance, and then it happens, and you're like, shit, I just reacted. It takes time, and it takes practice. Faith is a muscle, and, learning to respond is a muscle. But again, the 5th step is where we gain our awareness, and our strength comes from, the fact that if you're lucky, and I'm lucky, I've had sponsors and have a sponsor who shares with me that I'm not alone in my struggle. That I am not the only person in the world who has had the urge to beat up the mother of other 15-year-olds. It's not bad, as long as you don't do it. And there's no thought police, but it's, better to try and ask God to direct my thoughts and actions to positive and loving things, because that way I don't kind of go down that really negative road. The 5th step promises talk about, we can look the world in the eye. We can be alone and at perfect peace and ease. Our fears fall from us. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. The feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. We feel we are on the broad highway walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. That sounds like some pretty serious stuff. Let's see. Alone at perfect peace and ease. Well, I can tell you that you can't be dependent on the opinions of others, living with knee-jerk reactions, caught up in other people's business, blaming people, and dependent on, your well-being, is all connected to the mood swings of other people, and feeling alone in a perfect peace and ease. Those things are not mutually compatible, So, but I don't think I think it's a gradient, I think there's a scale. I don't think that you're either one or the other. I think the more, at peace you are, the less those things are in your life. And I think that because I'm human and you're human, because I hate to speak about you like I'm not part of you, so I'm just going to talk about me. The more I am at peace, it's because I'm focusing on, keeping my dependency on God, keeping my focus on what I can bring to life and to other people, and how I can be of service, and how I'm using that 10-second delay, how I'm remembering that it's not about me, whatever it is. The lady that cuts me off in the parking lot, whatever snit my kid is in because she's 15 and has no control over her hormones, whatever's going on with whoever. It's not normally about me, and if it is about me, and they'll tell me, and if they're not going to tell me, then that's their resentment and not mine, as long as I know I didn't do anything wrong. And if I can do all that stuff right all in the same day, I am alone and in perfect peace and at ease. Do I do all that stuff right all in the same day, every day? No, not usually. Some days, though, I can do that, and that's amazing. That is an amazing gift. And that is when I fall over on my own feet. That is when I am, when I feel the nearness of my Creator. And that is when I'm walking, on that broad highway, and I just am feeling that rush, that it's so great to be alive, and that energy just flowing through me from the tops of my head to the tip of my toes, and it is such an amazing feeling, and to the extent that I have done this step thoroughly, that I continue to use inventory properly, that I'm honest, that I get God involved with the things that I can't do on my own. There are people that I am always going to react to. They are hardwired into my life. I call them mommy and daddy and sister and husband and daughter, boss, ex-husband. There's people that are hardwired in our lives that we're going to react to whether we want to or not. And, the truth is that, that what keeps me, if this is react and this is respond, what keeps me moving on this continuum is getting God involved. It's being of service to you. It's being, it's praying for them even when I would rather not. And they're laughing at me again because they know me. And that is, and that's the gift of the fifth step. What the fifth step shows me is all my weaknesses. It shows me, it's like when you go to the doctor and you get your blood work done and they say, well, you got to work on your cholesterol and your triglycerides, and it's time to start eating oatmeal and maybe lay off the Big Macs. And you say, oh, okay. And you can do it or you cannot do it, You can take these things and you can do something about it, or you can live in it and be miserable. And if you live in it and be miserable and you're an alcoholic, chances are you will slide back down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, drink. Or if you choose something to do something about it, you will take it to 6 and you will take it to 7. You will make your amends, and you will have a spiritual experience as a result of this program. But for me, especially these last couple times that I've used inventory rightly, not as a way to vilify other people, which I did use it for in the beginning, which is not appropriate, but, God did what he did in my life. I had whatever experience I had, and I'm standing here sober today, so it is what it is. You can have the same experience. It's a matter of, they say that 6 is a step that separates the men from the boys, but I think 5 is really the jumping off point for alcoholics in a lot of ways. If you can get to 5 and be honest and do it, with your whole heart. Jump in and just do it. From there, it's talk about being amazed before you're halfway through. There is so much freedom that comes from this step. There is so much bliss. And as a sponsor, who's heard fifth steps, I always say, okay, what's the one you don't want to do? Tell me the one you don't want to talk about. Let's start with that one. And for every sponsee who's ever started with that thing, amazing, joyous things have happened. Changes that you see right before your eyes. People who literally, I have goosebumps. I'm thinking about the last time I did that, and this woman, literally, sparks were practically coming out of her. It was pretty crazy, and she's a completely different person now because of it. Because the one thing that she really despised the most about herself, was most ashamed of, she let go of. And I didn't point and laugh, and I didn't say, oh my God, and because we've all, been on the other side of that one thing we didn't want to say, and it turns out that, it's much harder to admit to yourself than to God and another person. And it's saying it out loud that is, it's really, you close your eyes and you're only talking to yourself. And, I'm blown away by the power of what this step gives you, and the power of, that feeling that the drink problem has disappeared. For me, having the drink problem disappear was that was amazing. But later on, year 1, year 2, the drink problem disappeared. But in year 5, having how do you explain it? That I can't live in my own skin because I'm totally consumed with what other people think about me all the time. That problem disappear. There's no words for that. People stop drinking 1,000 times in their lives. To have the thinking problem disappear. To have the put your head on your pillow and not have any noise at night. That problem disappear. Oh my God, that is I can't even say, it's like the stupid MasterCard commercial. It's priceless. And I can't remember the last time I put my head on my pillow and it wouldn't shut up. It's a gift. Even when I'm really worried and I'm really upset, I talk to my sponsor, I talk to my network, I talk to God, I write it out. And I let it go, because I know the limit of my power, and I know that there's only so much I can respond to, and the rest I have to leave. And I was taught that in this step, I was taught that in this step, that my problem is always going to be fear, and that the way that I make it worse is by the stuff that I do. So if I don't do the stuff, I'm not going to make it worse. And it seems so simple and logical, like a 5-year-old could figure it out. Don't put your hand on the stove. Don't stick your finger in the electrical outlet. But till I was 31, 32 years old, I was walking around, bzz, 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 burn, burn, every time. I couldn't figure out how to stop screwing my own life up. Even sober, I couldn't stop screwing my life up. Not drinking, working the steps out of the big book. Couldn't stop screwing my life up because I didn't know how to stop reacting to you and needing you to make me okay. And now I love you all. Really, I love everyone in AA. I'm so grateful that you're all here, and I'm so blessed to be a part of this fellowship and to have found this solution. But, if you don't like me, that's cool. It's all right because I like me. And I might even love me at some point, but I like me, and the fact that I like me is only because I've done this work. And this work has taught me that I don't need anyone else to like me. God loves me. I'm perfect the way that I am. And, I can't connect myself emotionally to everybody else. My job is to bring the best I can to you and be what I can for you and not worry about what you're doing for me. And that way, I'm not a slave to whatever kind of crappy day you're having, or if you got up on the wrong side of the bed, or if you didn't have your coffee, or whatever. I think that the promise, it says here on this lovely guide that Karen sent me, because she's my grand sponsor, it says the promise here is that feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. Wow. Did you ever feel like you just couldn't get out of your own way? Like, I don't know, for 2/3 of my life, I felt like I couldn't get out of my own way. I just wanted to change. I didn't even know what I wanted to change into. I remember saying that, like every couple years, I'd be like, I need to change. I need to, not I need to change. I need a change. I didn't really know what I needed a change of, like hair color, fashion sense. Like, I don't know what I needed to change. I wanted to change because I kept, I don't know, because I couldn't get out of my own way. And when I made that analogy about, backing into my life, it's because I literally, would paint myself into corners and I couldn't get out of my own way. And I didn't know, but the thing that I couldn't get out of my own way, couldn't get out of the way of, was my self-pity, my professional victim status. If they made like a wrestling, like a boxing belt for like victim champion of the world, I think I would have one, or would have had one at some point. And uselessness, like I was at the end and early in my sobriety. It's not even that I couldn't be of use to myself. I had a child. I remember this is very poignant for me. I had a 3-year-old daughter. I have the same daughter now. She's 15, obviously. But my daughter was 3 when I came in, and I remember whining to my sponsor on the phone how I couldn't deal with her. She was I needed to go to meetings, and she needed too much attention, and and I'm like, oh God, I don't know what to do, and she's so needy, and so she said to me, because she was wise, a young Jedi in the ways of the big book she was, and she said, you have a built-in way of getting out of yourself. That's such a gift in early sobriety. And I remember looking at the phone and being like, what the hell is she talking about? I didn't get it. And it took me like 2 years to figure out what she meant. And that's how in my way I was, that I didn't understand the idea that if I focused on, my beautiful little child, that I could stop thinking about me for a hot second and maybe get some relief. And I felt useless because I was useless to her and I was useless to myself. I was useless to everyone. I couldn't keep a job. I couldn't hold a conversation unless it was about me. I don't know what that's about. The laughing makes me nervous. Oh, okay. Either that or they're saying it's still true. One or the other. Anyway, I really, we're getting to the last 5 minutes, and I'm not sure that this has been an appropriate Big Book Workshop talk on Step 5, because it's my very first one. I'm getting some nods from my fans over there, so that's good. I have to say, though, that for me, the feeling of uselessness and self-pity has disappeared on the days when I am on the responding side of the scale. If I stay away from being dependent on what you think of me, if I use the 10-second delay before I open my mouth, I love Save Draft on email. Thank God for Save as Draft on email, right? It's kept me out of a lot of trouble. restraint of pen and tongue and computer, very good. If I don't, it's so funny. People are like, so what's going on? Like, I have friends that have moved away from the area that I live in the meeting. I go to a meeting where a lot of younger people go to my home group, and there's all this stuff that goes on, and I have no idea what any of it is because I don't care. I'm not in anybody's business. And everyone's like, what's going on? I'm like, I don't know. I just go to the meeting and I go home. I like it because they stay on the topic. They do a lot of service. It's my meeting. That's why I go. I don't really know what's going on with all the social stuff. And I used to know everything about everything, and I was like the clearinghouse for gossip. And now I don't have any gossip. It's a little boring, but it's better than, being in everybody's business and then having the opportunity to make amends to lots and lots of people. And I really, I pray every day to stay, on the side of reacting, on the side of responding, that I respond. I really have added that to my prayers in the last couple months, that, please let me think and respond and not feel and react. Because sometimes my feelings involve punching people. And I took up kickboxing about 8 months ago. I'm not great at it, but I'm good enough that I could probably hurt someone. And sometimes my feelings are intense. My initial reactions are still the same alcoholic that, came in here 11 and a half years ago. And I could probably, I hear you say something and my initial reaction is, I feel fear. I feel judged. It's probably because I'm judging you. And I want to, backhand you and give you a good kidney punch. And, it's good that I don't do that, because I get God involved every single day. On the days that I'm over on the responding side, I really do feel from head to toe that God is with me. I do really feel free. And I do really feel that the only way that I get to keep that is if I use the fifth step the way that it's meant to be used, not just admitting it to myself, not just admitting it to God, because I was told very early, in one of my early recoveries, I think it was early recovery before this last one, the second to last early recovery, I was told that it is very difficult for an alcoholic to be honest by themselves. It helps to have someone to tell it to. So for me to admit to God, to myself, and to another human being, the exact nature, not the kind of nature, not the, I kind of said something stupid to my whoever, or I did something slightly dishonest, but the exact nature of my wrong, it is such a relief, and it's like pulling off a Band-Aid, and if I just do it, the benefit far outweighs the, minor discomfort. And it's like a muscle, if I use it regularly, it gets strong and it becomes a habit, just like all the other disciplines that I was taught in AA. It's, I don't know, it's one of my greatest gifts. I call my sponsor and say some pretty outlandish stuff, but I say it. I want to live. And I don't just want to live and not drink and be one of those really miserable, cranky people. I want to live, and I want to be free, and I want to feel the nearness of my Creator so that I get that tingly feeling, and the hairs on the top of my head stand up like they are right now, and I feel chills, because I know that God is near me or with me or in me, because I'm not reacting to my fear, and I'm living in the sunlight of the Spirit. So I hope that, there was something to be gained by everything I've said for all of you, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my Step 5 experience with you, and I guess that's all I've got to share.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Sobercast is ad-free, and we'd like your help in order to keep it that way. So if you'd like to help us be self-supporting by pledging $1 or $2 a month, visit Sobercast.com and look for the donate links. Thank you very much.